Chapter 4. Research. Sana stared at the phone in her hand like it was a bomb. On the screen, a news article stared up at her in mockery. The title? Local supervillain found dead. Police claim foul play. Well, that wasn't good. She opened the article and was immediately greeted by a censored picture of Lord Static's body. The phone slipped out of nerveless hands, and she curled up to place her head between her knees. She couldn't breathe. It felt like the oxygen content in the air had halved. Sana. Her dad placed his right hand on her back and used his left to guide one of hers to his breastbone. Match me. Deep and slow. Come on. It was a battle, but she managed to get herself back to stability with her dad's help. Sorry, she wheezed when she could speak again. I didn't think. It's okay. He cradled her head to his shoulder. His heartbeat was steady and strong, if a bit fast. She let him take her weight. From the corner of her eye, she saw her mother pick up the phone. She let out a small noise of comprehension when she looked at the screen. Honey, I'll dial. It'll be on speaker. We're right here. Do you need a minute? Can I go wash my face? If she was going to do this, she wanted to feel human. Right now, she felt like a pile of wet spaghetti. Her parents exchanged looks over her head. If you're up for it, her dad said, then I don't see a problem. He put her on her feet. The carpet did its best to throw her off, but the bathroom was close, and Sana was determined. She'd almost made it when her foot caught on something. The hopping stumble she performed to catch herself was undignified, but it beat face-planting. Once she was no longer in danger of breaking her nose on the floor, she glared at the offending object, then faltered. She tripped over a circlet. Lord Static's circlet. The one she'd taken from the site of his death, along with the nanobots, and the stuff in her bag. Oh no. Dad, she shouted, what's the sentence for removing evidence from a crime scene? Why? Because I did it, he swore, profusely. That summed things up well. Sana picked up the crown and felt the weight of it. She had no frame of reference for how heavy a gold headpiece was supposed to be, but it seemed light. Smears of bloody fingerprints turned the gold to rust in places, while the rest of the metal gleamed like sunlight. Despite the shine, it felt filthy. She carried it to the kitchen with the tips of her fingers and placed it gingerly on the counter. Her dad's tirade had worn off, and both of her parents joined her. There's more besides the nanobots? Her dad asked. She swallowed hard. Yeah, and there's some stuff besides the crown. It's in my bag. Go get it. She did. The contents spilled over the counter. Amongst the papers and binders lay a choker and a belt. They'd migrated to the bottom of the bag during her flight. Small wonder she'd missed them earlier. Why did you take these? Her mom moved to touch the belt, then hesitated. Her hand hovered over one of the pouches. The nanobots I understand, but these weren't attached to you the way those are. He gave them to me. I told you that. She knew she was being defensive, but they needed to understand. Losing the bots was out of his control, but he gave me what he had on him of his own will. I'm not some kind of opportunistic grave robber. I never said you were, her mother soothed, but you do realize how bad this could look. You're already going to be the main suspect in the murder. Your story's not exactly easy to believe, and you say the actual killer shattered, so it's not as though you could point to it. She was right. Crap. Tell me honestly, how screwed am I? You're at least on the bed. Permission to swear? Granted. She took full advantage. Once it was out of her system, she glared at the belt. I hate this. Nothing to be done now except forge ahead. her dad stated. The longer we wait, the worse it reflects on you. The fictitious salmonella should keep you out of school until spring break, so there's a 2-week window before you rejoin society, assuming you don't get arrested in the interim. I like that assumption. As do I. There are a few options to make it happen. First off, maintain your silence. He held up one finger. Not the best if you left evidence of your presence there, since they'll track you down. If you didn't, the chances of law enforcement finding you are slim to none. You have no prior connection to Lord Static or James Crow, no criminal record, no ability to inflict the injuries he suffered pre-mortem. James Crow must have been Lord Static's civilian identity. Sana thought the name suited the face. I bled, and they might have my fingerprints if Lord Static's blood didn't wash them away. My jacket, too, so the same goes for my skin. Then there's option 2, an anonymous tip with the truth. It'll spur their curiosity, and they'll try to find you if they believe you, but the same factors as option 1 apply. Option 3 is option 2, but with a lie. Not a chance. She shook her head. I'm not lying to the cops about a murder. I'm already in the hole. That'll just make it worse. Good girl. He gave a single decisive nod. Option 4, full disclosure. You go in, explain everything, offer yourself to the mercies of the law. I don't like it. I'm all but guaranteed to get arrested with that one, especially if I reveal the tech. And I'm not telling anyone besides you two about the tech. Sana's parents communicated telepathically. It's for the best, her mother said after a moment. A much more experienced nanobot manipulator was killed a scant few hours ago. The killer was likely guided by somebody who's still at large. When they find out the bots and the rest of this is gone, who knows what they'll do. And wow, if that wasn't a way to make Sana's nerves spike. It made sense, too, given there was no reason to kill such a prominent local figure and not brag about it, unless the death was a stepping stone and anonymity was necessary to proceed. The hellhound was animalistic at best, so it'd have gone after easier prey than a superweapon. It had tried to kill her instead of the dying man in its jaws, so it may have been under orders to eliminate witnesses as well. Crap. Upgrade on the bed to having intercourse. The mastermind is at large, and they didn't get anything from Lord Static except his body. It's not valuable, since he was a weapon, not a power. And Sana had the weapon, so the corpse would be perfectly ordinary, except for maybe the brain. The man was a genius. Maybe they thought the bots would go to the first person to come across them after the previous host's death, and they didn't anticipate my presence. It would have been tough to do so. You usually take the main road, her dad pointed out. If the killer was stalking Lord Static, they wouldn't have seen you using the alley. Bad luck, Sana stated. For them, her mother retorted. Good for everyone else. Except me, including you. You're now going to be the most powerful person in 95% of the rooms you walk into. That's not something to take lightly. And all it costs is a target on my back. The words both tasted and sounded bitter. She picked up the belt to distract herself. It felt like some sort of thick canvas. 8 equally sized pouches split the center, which was indicated by a gold buckle that latched with a hidden switch on the back. If Sana hadn't watched Lord Static reveal the sliding panel that covered the switch, she'd have never found it. All but one of the pouches had something in them. Sana laid the belt out flat and opened each, leaving the contents above the pouch that had produced them. There were, from left to right, 3 black USB sticks with different ports and sizes, a handful of smooth pea-sized balls, miniature tools including lockpicks, a screwdriver, and a pen, a thick stack of magnetic stripe cards, cash, and mostly fake IDs, zip ties, a burner phone, nothing, and a silver bottle that, upon opening, revealed nothing except a sloshing sound and a faint scent of oranges and vanilla. She stoppered it quickly, not trusting the contents one iota. I take it you're not giving that stuff to the police then, seeing as how you've just put your fingerprints all over it, her dad said. You're right. She picked up one of the balls and held it up to the light. He'd have rather given these to a stranger than the police. I want to respect that, even if it's not the most legal thing to do. Plus, he did save my life, so I owe him at least this. It'll make your life harder. I know. She packed up everything except the bottle. Could I have a small glass or a saucer or something? A shot glass would work. Are you sure this conversation is over? Oh, it's not, but I'd like a shot glass anyway. She held up the bottle. I'd like to know how many locks I need to keep this behind, if any. Her dad placed a medicine cup in her hand. It was important enough for Lord Static to keep close. It may be useful. Sana placed a few drops in the cup. The liquid was the consistency and color of water. The smell hadn't gotten much stronger. She swirled it, sniffed it again, then knocked it back. Hey! Her mother lunged for her. Spit that out! It's flavored water. Pardon? Sana lowered the cup and held the liquid in her cheek. It's orange cream flavored water. Pretty tasty, actually, just a little sweet. She spat it into the sink. Guess even supervillains have to stay hydrated. Her mother sagged against her father in relief. Please, for the love of God, don't do that again. I was pretty sure it was safe. Lord Static's the stab foes in the heart type. I doubted he carried iocane or the like on his person. Pretty sure isn't good enough. Her mother grabbed the bottle and slammed it on the countertop. Water spilled over her hand. That's the second time you could have died today. Third or fourth if you count what went down when you got the nanobots, which I very much do. She took a shaky breath and seemed like she was going to continue, but shut her mouth, clenched her fists, and walked out. Guilt welled up, and Sana took a step to follow, but her dad caught her arm. Leave it, he advised. It'll just end in a screaming match. Give it some time to cool. You scared her badly, Peanut. I didn't mean to. Intentions don't matter when you see your kid running into traffic. Go take a shower and go to bed. We'll place that call in the morning. But no. It'll keep for a night, and the whole family should be there. It's late, and sleep will smooth things over. Go. He gave her a little push towards the bathroom. She went. The hot water felt heavenly, though the steam made her sleepy. She left the bot jacket draped over her bed frame and lost consciousness before her head hit the pillow. Her dreams were a fragmented mess, joined by blurs of red and black. Dark liquid the consistency of molasses dripped off her hands and pooled at her feet, but she couldn't feel the temperature or smell what should have been metallic. A creature made of TV static laughed hysterically as a pack of dogs mauled it. Flies buzzed in her ears and dragged her around like a puppet. Bare feet, her own, danced painlessly across an endless field of glass shards in every shade and texture imaginable until they had been cut to ribbons. She woke up with tears in her eyes and a strangled scream in her throat. The blankets had formed a tangle around her legs at some point in the night, and she fought her way free with a viciousness reserved for the early hours of the morning. Cool carpeting met her feet. She waited for her eyes to adjust and grabbed the jacket, then crept through the house toes first, placing her foot down all the way before transferring her weight, then repeating the maneuver. The bend in her knees kept her center of gravity low. Her dad had showed her how to sneak after an instance where her nocturnal activity had led to him waking up convinced someone had broken in. The aftermath was never to be spoken of again. She made it to the living room undetected and backflopped onto the couch. Her heels rebounded once on the hardwood and only her upper body hit the cushions, but she didn't bother getting more comfortable. The point was to stay awake, after all. She rooted around the couch cushions one-handed and dug the TV remote out from between them, then turned the volume all the way down and set the show to some mindless cartoon. The jacket made her shoulders itch. She let the bots go, and a knot that was less physical than mental eased. She let herself sink into the couch cushions a bit more. Her mind wandered from topic to topic without lingering on any one. The bots, since they lacked conscious directions, hovered around her in their cloud. It was peaceful. Slowly, Sana's mind wandered back to the bots. A thought pulled them all in front of her, sent the collective spinning like a top, then formed it into a pillar. There was no rhyme or reason to the shapes, but each one came a little easier. She suspected it was like learning to walk, or like physical therapy. Use and exercise led to strength and dexterity. For example, lifting a glass of water without spilling it was out of the question, but with practice, such a feat would come easily. She tried to twist the cloud into a human shape, but it was tricky. The basic form, head, torso, limbs, wasn't much different from the pillar, but getting the right proportions wasn't working, and the details like hands, feet, and the face kept slipping away and morphing into distinctly non-human configurations. The thing kept looking more like a creature found on an internet forum about scary stories than a person. The incessant buzzing only completed the picture. On a whim, she leaned into the changes. Her creature gave up any pretense of humanity. The limbs bulged, the face turned into a swirling vortex, and it grew a couple feet taller. It wasn't anything Sana'd like to run into on a dark night, and it was still morphing, but she had control. She chuckled to herself and dismissed the image. It popped like a balloon, and the bots returned to their neutral state around her. She called them back to the jacket and let her eyes slide shut. The lights from the TV left shadows behind her eyelids. She didn't intend to fall asleep. The next morning, she found a quilt had been thrown over her at some point in the night. Her mom was already in the kitchen. Sana smelled toast. She half rolled, half fell off the couch. The blanket and the jacket draped over it came with her. Fighting free was simple enough, but before she went too far, a pain in her chest made her stagger. She clutched at her heart, remembered her condition, and went back to collect the jacket. Her mother's lips thinned at the sight of the garment tied around her daughter's waist. Sana felt herself flush and went to the cereal cupboard. "Morning, Mum," she said. "Morning, sweetheart." She pushed the button to release her toast. "How did you sleep?" "Not great. Woke up in the middle." "I saw." The blanket was a peace offering then. Or, no, not a peace offering, but an acknowledgement. Care. Even with the brittle atmosphere, it was going to be okay. Things got tenser when her dad came in. He and her mom were perfectly cordial, but there was an undercurrent that felt like stepping on eggshells. Guess her dad's theory of sleep acting as a reset button on hurt feelings was bogus. Granola bits stuck in her molars, and the careful discussion set her nerves on edge. She found herself retreating to get dressed. A pair of black sweatpants, a stained and worn soft t-shirt that was no longer fit to be seen by the outside world, and a blue glass bracelet later, she felt ready to face reality. She left the jacket tied around her waist. In truth, she wanted to put it on, to wrap herself in its protection, but that impulse didn't make sense, and her parents already weren't stoked. Plus, the nanobots were dangerous. It didn't stop her from trusting them instinctively. At that realization, she clenched her jaw. These things were messing with her head badly, and she'd had them less than 24 hours. What else would they do to her? Feeling nauseous now, she retrieved Lord Static's burner phone. It was time to face the music. Hopefully doing this meant she wouldn't wind up facing the cops. At the last second, she backtracked and grabbed the voice-modifying choker. They'd talked while she was gone. She could read it in the lines of her dad's forehead and the corners of her mom's mouth. The eggshells from earlier had disappeared. It made Sana feel bad for what she had to do. The phone hit the table like an executioner's axe. Sana would deny slamming it down for dramatic effect, but, well, some things deserved a drama. The blue tablecloth protected both the table and the phone, anyway. Her mom jumped a bit, but her dad didn't. Instead, he lifted his eyebrow at the device pinned under her splayed hand, then trailed the expression up to her face. She met his gaze head-on. "I have to do this now," she said, "or I'll lose my nerve." Wait, Her mom placed her hand over Sana's and rubbed her knuckles with her thumb. Why don't we call a lawyer first? It'll take too long. She forced the agitation down and was grateful her clothes deadened the jacket's vibrations. It's already been a full night. If I wait any longer, things will just get worse on all fronts. They'll get worse if you go into this blind, too. The pressure turned into a squeeze, and Sana pulled her hand away. I didn't do anything I couldn't justify, Mom. And what can we tell the lawyer? Oh, yes, Sana here totally watched a man get murdered and ran away without reporting the crime days after the death of arguably the biggest supervillain in Calabria. Nobody's stupid enough to leave those dots unconnected. We can think of something. How long will that take? How long after we think of something will it be until a lawyer will be able to see us? You're talking weeks, and that's weeks I don't have. She was shouting, so she forced herself to take a deep breath and lower her voice. It's just not viable, she said. We can't. Her mom took the phone and held it close to her chest. Then we can talk to someone unofficially. Find some law books. Something. Sana held out her hand for the phone and shook her head. It'd just be stalling and lying. Better to rip the Band-Aid off. Please? The transfer of the phone was painfully slow. Despite getting what she wanted, Sana only felt the urge to grimace. Thanks. You don't have to do this, her mom said in a last-ditch effort to stop her daughter. Sana stared her dead in the eyes and hit the call button. In the time it took the operator to pick up, Sana had clipped the choker around her neck. It was too loose, so she pressed the round metal piece at the center to her throat and hoped it would be enough. Calabria Police Department tip line, how can I help you? I have information regarding the circumstances of Lord Static's death. Her voice came out an octave lower and distorted by static. Her vocal cords vibrated weirdly, and she could tell her throat would go numb or sore if she spoke for too long. Who should I speak to about that? She heard a shuffle of papers on the other end of the line. Her free hand fumbled for her mother's, and she caught it and squeezed. Her dad came around and placed his hand on her shoulder. The phone kicked on again. Is this a real call? I swear to God, if you're another glory hound, it's legit. I can describe the scene you found, including details left out of the news report. I'm not a liar. I'll be the judge of that. Go on, spill. She took a deep breath. Lord Static died at approximately 3:15 on Friday, April 18th. The fatal injury was a bite that severed the femoral artery, though he injected himself with something he referred to as Dr. Prazenis's wonder drug cocktail shot a few minutes prior to death, which may have contributed to his demise. The needle should have been close to the body. She grew steadier as she spoke. There was a black bike jacket over the site of the leg injury, an indication that someone tried to provide medical aid. He was thrown into the wall about 5 to 10 minutes before he died. Do you believe me now? The silence that came through could only be described as dumbfounded. You're the witness? Was the first thing the interviewer managed to let out. Yeah, the jacket's mine. I panicked and left it behind. Some of the blood might be mine too, honestly. I wasn't paying all that much attention. Back up. Start from the beginning. Go slowly. And what's your name? I'm staying anonymous. This is a burner, and I'm chucking it after this call. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I want my involvement to end after this. That's less than ideal. It's what I'm offering. I almost got killed along with Lord Static yesterday. I have no wish to put myself in the line of fire again. The interviewer paused. Tell me exactly what happened. She gave him the play-by-play of her initial sighting and the fight. Organizing her thoughts was tricky, but the interviewer was good at guiding her to the relevant information, and her parents were silent pillars of support. She didn't lie, though she shut down any attempts to gain personal information. Overall, it was going pretty smoothly until the fight was over. It kind of shattered, turned into these lights, but the light pieces looked sharp, if that makes sense. I fell off the dumpster, probably would have impaled myself or cracked my head, but the sword fell apart and I landed on a cushion, a construct. I guess Lord Static felt responsible for me or something, 'cause that was all him. The inside of her throat felt like someone had taken a wire brush to it, and she paused to drink some of the ice water her mom had grabbed halfway through. It didn't help much. I tried to leave, but then I realized he wasn't moving, and I saw the blood, and I tried to help. I really did, but he... Her voice broke. I freaked out and ran away, and that's it. Spent the rest of yesterday having panic attacks. Only got the courage to call just now. To clarify, you attempted to help, he died, then you ran. Yeah, is why I left the jacket. I was using it to apply pressure. And you were certain he was dead when you left. People don't fall unconscious with their eyes wide open after losing a gallon of blood. That and the nanotech would switch to a new owner upon the old one's death. Unless the trigger for transference was the stopping of the current host's heart, not true brain death. And oh, that made a lot of sense, actually, with her new cardiac condition. Why was she such an idiot? She should have thought of that yesterday. She almost missed the "fair enough" from the interviewer. She tuned back in when he said, "Just a few more questions. Lord Static's technology was not found on the scene. Do you know what happened to it?" And there was the million-dollar question. Lie or tell the truth? She settled on the truth. Let's just say the corpse wasn't the only reason I bailed, and LS had some strange ideas about passing on his inventions. Holy! Sana dropped the speaker setting for a moment, then re-enabled it. You're Lord Static Mark II? No, I'm the unlucky sucker who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and now has an incredibly dangerous piece of technology physically attached to them. If I could get rid of the stupid things, I would, and I didn't mean to interfere with the investigation when I took them. If I did, do you think I'd be on the phone with you right now? God, her throat hurt. She coughed, and it felt like that one time she'd gotten strep throat. Sorry. Look, I'm just trying to keep myself safe. This is the best I can do. The tech thief was the #1 suspect. You're the #1 suspect. You can believe me or not, but I did not kill Lord Static. I believe you. The reply surprised her. The interviewer continued. Your story is consistent with the forensic evidence. Your desire to remain anonymous is understandable under the circumstances you described, and, quite frankly, you don't seem the murderous type. I'm sensing a but in there. But until we find out who actually did it, you're still at the top of the suspect list. All the more reason to stay scarce until this gets sorted out. I'm sorry for the extra work. She hung up before they could respond. Probably not the best decision ever, but she was starting to feel trapped, and she'd said everything she needed. She turned off the phone and tucked it into her pocket. Well, that could have gone better, but hey, I thought of a way to get the bots off. Do you think I could survive being electrocuted badly enough to stop my heart if someone was here with an AED ready to start it again? The identical horrified looks her parents sent her told her exactly what they thought of that plan. She shrugged. Worth a shot. Okay, someone has clearly not gotten enough sleep. Sana's mom took hold of her biceps and steered her into the living room. Over Sana's protest, she called, Honey, pick a movie. We're having a family day and getting our daughter to stop trying to get herself killed. It could be worse, Sana thought as she settled in between her parents. The thought repeated through board games, card games, lunch, and dinner. The day went well enough that by the time she went to bed, she had a plan for the immediate future. Over the next few days, she focused on testing the bot's limits and capabilities, as well as studying up on her new situation. She may technically qualify as a superweapon, but given how little she knew about the workings of the tech, she might as well be a superpower. The distinction between the two had never been important before, so she didn't know much. The library was a godsend. The computers allowed her to search the web anonymously, the archives had all sorts of old newspapers, and there were plenty of books on supers. She read a frightening number of obituaries, and an only moderately less frightening number of resurrection reports, enough intro to mechanical engineering and history of superhumans for dummies books to make her head swim, and more legal documents than she could shake a stick at. The internet proved equally fruitful, and she usually ended up passed out in a sunny part of the teen section with a stack of notebooks cradled in her arms. Either the librarian, a well-meaning man in his mid-30s with a gentle smile and gentler voice, or her parents calling her about dinner would wake her up. She'd stagger out of the stacks, eat dinner, and spend the rest of the night either in the workshop, playing with the bots, or both. After 3 days of this, Sana stayed home to reorganize the mishmash of notes she'd collected. The workroom desk wound up being too small, so she appropriated the living room floor. More important pages were torn out and scattered around the 3 main books, and she knelt in the center of a veritable summoning circle of paper. To her great embarrassment, she'd fallen down quite a few rabbit holes. Her superhuman situation notebook contained a fair bit of information on superheroes and supervillains. Her construction book contained a disproportionate number of soldering tips, and her past and future book was a disaster from cover to cover, with sketches of stained glass panels interspersed with scribbled out lists, mind maps, and nonsense math equations. She didn't remember writing those. Disconcerting as the past and future's contents may have looked to an outsider, Sana had the ability to translate most of her own mad ramblings. The math was beyond her, and most of the lists were illegible, but everything else was all right. The superhuman situation notes ran the gamut from straightforward to more convoluted than an Escher painting. Funnily enough, the easiest to deal with was the timeline. Gods and their derivatives had been around since religion had been a thing, and the general consensus was that they served as proto-supers. Some of them were still kicking around, like the Aztec pantheon's avatars. They had proved remarkably durable, and Sana remembered they were currently based in Mexico City. As for more contemporary supers, the earliest report Sana had been able to dredge up was from World War I, and it detailed the existence of a spy who could literally walk through walls. It lined up with what Sana had learned in school. Powers had faded in and out of positive public opinion, but once the civil rights movement kicked in and the human rights activists got the worst of the power-hungry lawmakers booted, laws were passed so those with extraordinary talents would be treated the same as anybody else. That didn't stop specific places, and every once in a while a power-based trafficking ring would be discovered and broken up, usually taking down at least 3 politicians or high-ranked military officials in the process. But on the whole, Sana could have picked a worse era to develop superhumanity. There was a lot of other stuff in the notebook, but she knew what she needed with that. As for her specific circumstances, the term superweapon had been coined in reference to the first machine gun, then had been expanded to include technologically based superhumans in the late 1940s. A person didn't have to invent a weapon to qualify as one. They just had to primarily use advanced tech in their crime fighting, or be tied to tech in a way a normal person wouldn't be. Cyborgs and such. Sana fit right in. Weapons were, on the whole, rarer than powers, but a greater percentage became heroes and villains. Sana hadn't found out anything regarding a breakdown of superweapons versus superpowers in regards to the total population, but she knew enough by doing some quick mental math with the types of historical heroes she'd found. It wasn't surprising. Making and becoming a weapon required a certain level of genius or desperation, not to mention paranoia and eccentricity. Or dumb luck, a nasty little voice in the back of Sana's head whispered. Stupid, stupid, horrible, dumb luck, just like yours. Shut up, she thought, and she flipped to another page. This one focused on the legalities of being super in the U.S. There wasn't much there. The laws mainly focused on superheroism. She shelved it for another day. Different priorities right now. Her pile shifted from general supers to Lord Static and the rest of Calabria's crazies. She managed to compile a list of each of their abilities, though she knew she may have misinterpreted or missed some. That was the last of what she had, and she didn't want to deal with it tonight, so she shut the book, gathered up the papers, matched them to their topics, and carried everything to the workroom. Tidying up the desk was a monstrous task. Breaking it into pieces over the past few days had cleared away about half the mess. It was good enough that Sana could place the books and papers in a corner, then throw a few glass designs over top of them. She'd find a better hiding place later. Both of her parents were at work, so Sana headed to the living room for bot practice. The relief that came when she released the bots hadn't changed, and she suspected it never would. She made the cloud hover dense around her arms, then threw some punches straight forward. At the maximum extension of her arm, she set the cloud out further, then retracted it. She repeated the exercise 20 times with both arms, then switched to crosses. Once her arm started aching, she switched to kicks. The warm-up left her feeling limber and loose. She left the bots close to her skin, easier to feel them that way. Her phone took its place on the arm of the couch, the volume went up, and Sana started to dance. Nobody could call her clumsy. She had too much training for that, and her awareness of her own body had been enhanced to an unnatural level since the nanobots had bonded to her. That said, her moves lacked the technical skill and style of a true dancer, and she frequently found herself repeating moves or making thuds with her landings. She couldn't fall into the zone the way she could with her glasswork or a spar, and she felt more than a little stupid plenty of times, but controlling the bots was slowly becoming intuitive. Soon, or, well, not soon, but soon enough, she would have full control. If she couldn't find a way to get rid of them without dying first, of course. Her head started to hurt about an hour in. She recalled the bots, unsure if the headache was normal or a sign of overexertion, and unwilling to risk the latter. She dragged herself to her room and flopped back first onto her bed. Her arm went over her eyes, and she fumbled for her phone. Music would help with the headache. Soft notes filled the room, and Sana sighed in relief. A painkiller might have been more effective, but she tried not to take those unless absolutely necessary. The music changed again, and she felt her headache grow more distant. Everything started to grow more distant, actually, except for a knot of tension under her back. With a grunt, she let the bots disperse, and her whole body felt better all at once. The thought that she probably should not have done that did cross her mind, but it was the last thing to hit before she fell asleep, so she didn't have time to consider the consequences. Said consequences smacked her in the face as soon as she woke up, but they were less dire and more embarrassing. Her dad's voice was what called her back to the land of the living from a dream about trying to tame wild butterflies that dripped blood from their wings. "Sana," he called. "Sana, Sana." It didn't sound urgent, so she grumbled her way to wakefulness and stretched out her back before opening her eyes. "Ugh," she slurred, dragging her mushy brain out of REM. Her dad was standing in the doorway, Bread the cat draped over his shoulders like a living shawl. "I could see what you were dreaming," he said. "Huh?" The fact that Bread perked up at the noise meant nothing. It was not kitten-like at all. It wasn't. Sana would deny it to her grave. "Dreams? Your bots." He walked to the bed and leaned over. Bread, upon sensing his perch was no longer stable, hopped down to Sana's chest. His little paws placed a lot of pressure on her stomach, and she sat up before he could start climbing. Her dad stroked the cat's head and scratched behind his ears. They were making shapes. Looked like dripping butterflies if someone put them through an unfocused camera lens. "Huh." Sana scooted until she was leaning against the headboard and sitting crisscross. Bread, after a moment of deliberation, decided this was acceptable and settled with his head pinning her wrist to her knee and his body filling the enclosure formed by her legs. Her hand rested on his side, and he sighed in contentment. "Weird. I'll keep him locked down when I sleep, then," Sana declared. "Maybe it's 'cause I'm not consciously keeping him in line when I'm out of it." She looked back down at Bread, who'd forgiven her 2 days ago after a tiny bit of chicken salad-related bribery, then rubbed one of his ears between her fingers. I don't know. I don't know anything, really. Chin up. Her dad gave the cat one last pet and switched to pat her shoulder. You've got all the time in the world to figure it out.